Here is the uncomfortable part. A feeling you refuse to examine can keep negotiating from the dark. You call the decision logical, the distance necessary, the delay strategic. Sometimes it is. Sometimes fear wrote the memo and signed reason's name. Sometimes anger chose the tone while you kept saying you were just being honest. Sometimes grief emptied the room and you called it maturity. The point is not that every choice hides a secret feeling. The point is sharper. If you refuse to examine the feeling, you cannot know how much of the choice belongs to you and how much belongs to what you are trying not to feel. Do not confuse this with a command to perform every emotion in public. Privacy is not pathology. Restraint can protect a conversation, a child, a vulnerable person, a job, or your own safety. A feeling is not a license to explode, accuse, confess on demand, or make another person regulate you. But composure and resolution are different jobs. One manages what becomes visible, the other requires contact with what is actually happening inside. You can choose silence and still admit, privately, I am hurt. You can postpone a reaction without pretending there is no reaction. That distinction is where agency begins. Controlled studies of expressive suppression make a limited but useful point. When participants deliberately hid outward emotion, observers saw less expression. The internal response did not always follow the face. Some experiments found increased sympathetic cardiovascular activation. In paired conversations, suppression disrupted communication, reduced rapport, and raised blood pressure responses. These were acute laboratory studies, not a universal law about every culture or every moment. Social effects can vary with context and cultural values. Suppression can be useful in context, but the evidence destroys the fantasy that hiding a display automatically removes the response. Looking calm can be a social skill. It is not proof that the feeling has stopped working. That is how unnamed emotion keeps getting a vote. Fear can vote for avoidance. Shame can vote for perfectionism. Envy can vote for contempt. Hurt can vote for coldness. Anger can vote for a verdict delivered before the facts arrive. None of those translations is inevitable, and none can be diagnosed from one behavior. They are possibilities worth testing. Ask a brutal question. If I were not afraid, ashamed, grieving, jealous, or angry, would this decision still make sense? If the answer changes, the emotion was already in the room. Refusing to name it did not make you objective. It only made the influence harder to inspect. Naming is not magic. In one fMRI study, putting an emotion label on negative images was associated with lower amygdala response than other encoding tasks and greater activity in a prefrontal region. Other daily life research links more differentiated emotion reports with more effective regulation, but those findings do not prove that finding the perfect word cures distress. Use the evidence modestly. Language can create a workable pause. Bad gives you almost nothing. Embarrassed, betrayed, lonely, resentful, overwhelmed, and afraid of disappointing them point to different problems. Precision does not erase the feeling. It stops one shapeless alarm from impersonating the whole truth. Try a 4-part inventory before you act. First, the event, only what a camera could record. They have not replied in 2 days. Second, the feeling anxious and embarrassed. Third, the story, I am being rejected because I am not worth choosing. Fourth, the urge, send 3 more messages, withdraw or punish them first. Event, feeling, story, urge, do not collapse them. The event may be true while the story is uncertain. The feeling may be real while the urge is unwise. Once separated, each part can be answered differently. Verify the event, allow the feeling, question the story, and choose whether the urge deserves action. Then choose expression instead of discharge. Expression says, I felt dismissed when the plan changed without me. I want to understand what happened. Discharge says, you never respect me, and now you will feel what I felt. One opens information, the other recruits another person into your nervous system. You do not have to disclose everything. You do have to stop using other people as the evidence that your feeling is allowed. Pause. Write the sentence you want to send. Remove the mind reading. Remove the courtroom language. Keep the observable event, the feeling you own, and the request they are free to answer. If direct expression is unsafe, choose distance, documentation, and qualified support instead. Acceptance is not approval. Feeling anger does not mean obeying anger. Feeling fear does not mean surrendering to fear. Feeling grief does not mean making grief your identity. It means ending the internal fraud. Habitual acceptance has been associated in laboratory, diary, and longitudinal work with less negative emotion during stress and better later psychological health. That is evidence of a relationship, not a guarantee or a substitute for care. If distress is persistent, severe, disrupts sleep or daily functioning, or raises safety concerns, seek a qualified professional or emergency support. But for the ordinary moment, start here. Name what is present before it names your next decision. What you refuse to feel still gets a vote. What you face becomes information, and information does not have to take the wheel.